Coogs House. The Houston Cougars come out victorious and end up 3-0 to start the basketball season. Let's think happy thoughts, talk basketball. Let's jump in.
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, here to break down all things Cougs. If you're a U of H fan or just a hater who came to stop by, please be sure to subscribe down below. That way you can listen to the Cougs into your newsfeed each and every day. We appreciate you making Locked On Coogs your first listen of the day. If you found us on YouTube, welcome back to the YouTube channel. It's so great to see you again. Remember, hit that subscribe button. We're doing a giveaway every 250 subscribers. We're approaching 1750 rapidly, so subscribe, get us there, like and comment the video to let us know you're in the contest. If after talking today about Houston Cougar basketball, you just don't know what to say, you're more a football guy, you're not sure what to make of these games ahead of conference play, what have you, tell us in the comments down below as I'm watching the wrap-up of Monday Night Football, the most embarrassing way you've ever seen a game lost. Now, in a game that was won, Houston did end up knocking off Stetson University Hatters. The Stetson University Hatters is a fun mascot name, 79-48. That was not the most telling news of the day, to say the least. It did come out just before tip-off, about an hour before tip-off. We have a cause of death in the case of Reggie Chaney. We're not going to spend too long talking about it, but it was determined to be an accidental fentanyl overdose based on the toxicity reports, things like that, and the autopsy. As you said in the moment, several months ago at this point, there was no answer to that question that was going to make anyone feel good. I'm sure that because of what it was, there'll be all kinds of people talking about those kinds of things. I really just want to make sure we mentioned it and to say that we're not going past it. We're not talking about it. But at the end of the day, it's awful. It's unfortunate. It's sad. There's nothing we can say or do that's going to make it any easier. And there was no answer that we're going to get that was going to make it any easier. We could talk a full, long, and hard time talking about this, that, and the other thing having to do with what happened. I'm going to choose on this episode to talk about Houston Cougar basketball because, frankly, bad news needs distraction sometimes. And I don't mean to say that there are not, feelings to dive into there for people when those kind of things pop up, but we're going to keep talking about basketball. Houston did win about an hour later from that news dropping, tip-off against Stetson in the Fertitta Center. Houston won 79-48. It was still weirdly one of those games that Houston plays where we're in a close game for about the first 8 minutes. At the 12-minute mark in the first half, it was 9-6 Houston. Houston actually scored first. Then Stetson hit a couple of threes, and that was their unanswered 6 points. They never had 6 unanswered points again in the course of the basketball game. Houston had multiple double-digit runs for it. I think their biggest run was a 17-point unanswered run later in the game. Stetson finishing with 23 turnovers. The story of the game was that in the first half, they had 17 turnovers. Houston had 13 steals, and Stetson went into halftime with just 16 points. Those numbers are all dangerously close together, folks. That's not a good way to win a basketball game if you're Stetson Hatters. I keep loving to say that mascot, Stetson Hatters. It is named after Stetson, apparently. The same Stetson that made the hat company donated a large sum of money. The entire school renamed themselves, ultimately named their mascot after him as well. Fun facts from Parker here. The storyline of the game, we're going to talk in the second segment about favorite lineups and things we saw from lineups in this game. I want to talk some of the last segment about getting ready for the Charleston Classic this weekend and what we can take from this game and getting ready for that. With a couple of injury kind of moments in this game. In the first half, Jamal Shead walked off the court grabbing his foot and ankle. He did come back in the game in the second half and played fine. I commented on Twitter as I live tweet games whenever I can get to, in coaching basketball, so I can get hard sometimes. So Jamal Shead appeared to kind of twist an ankle foot. I mentioned if it were like the Kansas game in mid-February, he'd probably just be playing through it. But in the first half, they pulled him out and checked out. I'm sure they checked it out more at halftime. He went back in the second half. It was fine. Kind of on the inverse of that, Juwan Roberts played just 8 minutes in this basketball game. Sounds like his knee was a little, not great going in. knee was bothering him a little bit, and they just kind of said, you know what, we don't play again until Thursday, but they're going to play Thursday, Friday, and Saturday back-to-back days. Might as well take the rest of Monday night off. He played just 8 minutes. Wasn't effective 8 minutes for what it's worth. In his 8 minutes, he did have a rebound and a steal. And frankly, I thought he had an assist, but I guess it was a hockey assist. Now that I think about the play I'm thinking of. Other guys filled the stat sheet for Houston. Obviously, we're going to say this a lot this season, but LJ Cryer led the way in scoring, 21 points on 15 shots, 3 of 6 from behind the arc. Nice to see him find his 3-point shot. He was a tremendous shooter at Baylor, and we knew that's what we were get coming into Houston. It was nice to see him find that range. I was impressed by a couple guys coming off the bench. JoJo Tugler, I didn't realize only ended up with 2 points. We had 2 points, 2 steals, a block, an assist, 4 rebounds. He was all over the floor in his 15 minutes on it. He really did feel like he fit a couple different roles and was just, again, buy stock now, folks. JoJo Tugler's the real deal. This is going to be a tremendous Houston Cougar development project over the course of his career. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. His length and range, motor, all those kinds of things. I frankly would have thought he'd had more rebounds, blocks, and steals. And then I'm like, oh, wait, he was only on the floor 15 minutes. And frankly, some of those were in the garbage time at the end where they're kind of slowing things down. Terrance Arceneaux had a very similar kind of impact in the game. He played 22 minutes. He's the guy that filled in a lot once Juwan took his time off because he was, resting up his knee. Arceneaux finished with 10 points, 3 steals, 2 rebounds, a block, and an assist. Again, kind of poking his way into a bunch of different spots on the stat sheet. Damian Dunn came in and got 15 points off the bench early. He had his own run in the first half coming off the bench where it felt like the microwave of the 80s, right, when Microwave Johnson would come off the bench for the Lakers. He would do all kinds of stuff as well, but the thing he does when he comes off the bench is, I don't know, maybe this is just a shocker to me, but he comes to the bench and is already ready to shoot. I feel like most guys come off the bench needing to get a couple of possessions, a couple of plays, maybe a set their way, something to get into the flow of the action, get a layup, get some free throws, kind of get ready to go. He comes off the bench ready to shoot the basketball. It's really, really impressive. Obviously, we saw him do the same thing at Temple a year ago when they pulled their high 2 scores off the bench. It's just interesting to see it happen for us because, frankly, the way we used to play such a high speed and high tempo all the time, he comes in off the bench ready to do that as well. And it's really, really interesting to watch happen and unfold for Houston. Javier Francis had his 7 rebounds. I thought he had blocks. They called one of them a steal, so we ended up with 2 steals. And again, the 7 rebounds, I think the interesting thing there was that the interesting thing there on the 7 rebounds was all those rebounds that I can think of 4 on the top of my head very quickly. He is seizing the basketball, really pulling it and tucking it away. Maybe say it tucks away a little low, but in the grand scheme of things, he's snagging the basketball out of the air, which is a ton of fun to watch. The one block that I thought he had, I guess got ruled a steal. He 2-hand smacked it. I guess it might have been more of a deflection, it looks like. But it was so close to the shooter's hand. I guess technically it's, can you determine if it was a shot or a pass kind of stuff. Really impressive day out of him as well. And then I'm going to always look at what Emmanuel Sharp is doing. He got 4 threes off and didn't make any. Now, here's the thing. We talked in the first game about it's going to be a rotation of shooters. And Houston's going to have a bunch of different guys get hot at different points of the season. If it's Damian Dunn tonight, it'll be Emmanuel Sharp on Thursday. It'll be Terrance Arceneaux on Friday. It'll be Jamal Shead on Saturday. It'll be Juwan Roberts one of those days. So somebody's going to pop off and get hot each and every day. The goal is to stay healthy. And while Juwan Roberts rested his knee and Jamal Shead took some time off in the first half for his ankle, they were able to stay healthy. And if you need to stay healthy, if you have an unexpected reason why you can't stay healthy, you got to make sure you talk to our buddies over at Jace Medical. Jace Medical offers the Jace case, which is a way for me and you to make sure we have all of these different protective measures at home ready to go. The Jace case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. All it takes to get the Jace case to fill out a simple online form, and in some cases, jump on a quick call with the board-certified physicians, and you get ongoing care from the physicians or any treatment or any kind of related questions like that. Doctor-created and doctor-recommended, the Jace case offers all kinds of treatments and antibiotics for life-saving emergencies just to have on deck just in case. And if you use promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, you get $20 off. Get yours today at jacemedical.com. Now, in the second segment, I want to talk about lineups because people ask, Parker, why do you play these games against the Stetson Hatters to open up, the week? I was November 13th, open up the week. You got Charleston Classic this weekend. Why can't you go play? Baylor played Auburn already this year, or Arizona and Duke played. Why would Houston want to mess around with these Stetson Hatters? First of all, I'd argue that people say the same thing about Penn and also what Penn did to Villanova. Penn comes to town on December 30th, folks. That'll be a fun game. But I think that the real trick is for Houston trying to find a new identity, a post Marcus Sasser identity. You get a game like this one to go through and try out a bunch of different lineups, see what those lineups do against different types of teams. You saw in Stetson a team that ran a lot of zone, a lot of trapping zone out of it. They also, for what it's worth, have a ton of length. They're several inches taller and longer in wingspan than the NCAA averages across Division One, so it's a real size. I mean, they kind of see, and in a low stakes game because you ought to win it, you have more talent. You get to see what Houston can do against those different things and find different ways to continue to perfect your craft. One thing I love watching Kelvin do in these games, because Kelvin is a Hall of Fame coach, is to watch him put out different lineups and see what they get. So I took down a couple notes on lineups that I really enjoyed watching in this game, and some lineups that I think are interesting and provide interesting options for Houston. Right now, there is no singular in college basketball, especially in the Big 12. There'll be no singular lineup that is necessarily any more valuable than others. The kind of lineup that beats Kansas is not necessarily the same kind of lineup that beats Texas. It's not necessarily the kind of lineup that beats Kansas State. It's not necessarily the lineup that kind of beats Baylor, right? All these different teams in the Big 12 have different strengths. If you can cover the size of Dickinson and Adams and the big guards at Kansas, that doesn't necessarily mean you can keep with the speed and athleticism of a Baylor, right? You got to have options and versatility. And I think Houston has it, right? Houston, I think, is going to do very well. But you get to see them try out different things. And the first line I want to talk about, I got three lineups. One, two, three. The first line I want to talk about is Malik Wilson, LJ Cryer, Damian Dunn, Terrance Arceneaux, and JoJo Tugler. Now, that is a small lineup at the forward spot with Terrance Arceneaux at the 4 and JoJo Tugler at the 5, but a really big guard lineup in Malik Wilson and Damian Dunn as 2v3 guard-type players. You got the shooting of Cryer and Dunn on the floor at the same time. But what I thought was interesting about this lineup that they rolled on the floor for a few minutes against Stetson was to see the switchability, because Cryer is about 6'2" listed. But other than that, Wilson is a tall 6'5". Damian Dunn is a tall 6'5". Terrance Arceneaux is a tall 6'5". JoJo Tugler is a crazy, wicked long 6'8" and change. You really are functionally almost the same size with some extra length at the Tugler spot across the board. And so really, this is a switchable defense as Houston can offer. And you can have, Wilson and Dunn and Arceneaux are really fairly interchangeable. So any action they're involved in, they're just switching or bearing and rotating. And I guess they call it monstering, not bearing, but they're doing all kinds of rotations and things like that. And that can really fluster a defense, because truthfully, if you can switch every screen, you're never, and not give up a mismatch, you're never out of position from the screen. You kind of negate that as an advantage, right? So I really like the way that lineup covers things up. Now, it is a smaller lineup, and Tugler's high motor and Terrance Arceneaux's, frankly, knack for knowing where the balls come off the rim. Damian Dunn's got some old man wisdom to him and some strength. Malik Wilson can fly. You've got some ways to negate that. But I don't know if that lineup's just great against Hunter Dickinson as much as it's great against Baylor, right? Because the size switchability offers a bunch of different things in that. I also think it's worth pointing out that if Damian Dunn is hot, if Terrance Arceneaux continues to grow as a shooter, he shot pretty well on Monday night. That lineup creates a lot of spacing for a Malik Wilson and JoJo Tugler pick and roll, because then you have two crazy athletes attacking the rim with a bunch of shooters around them, right? That's a really fun option. Another fun option was I saw Jamal Shead, Malik Wilson, Emmanuel Sharp, JoJo Tugler, and Javier Francis all on the floor at the same time. And this was a very short-lived lineup. I'm not really positive why, but you have 3 point guard type guys in Shead, Wilson, and Sharp on the floor, right? 3 guys that can bring the ball to the floor and effectively run an offense. You have the shooting of, if Wilson's shot is what we think it will be, and Emmanuel Sharp on the floor at the same time. You have the size of Tugler and Francis on the floor at the same time. You have the length, frankly, of Tugler and Francis on the floor at the same time, and the defensive intensity of Francis at the rim, Jamal Shead at the point of attack, JoJo Tugler roaming around there somewhere, right? Like, it offers a bunch of different things. Now, if Malik Wilson is not hitting his jump shot that day, or if Emmanuel Sharp has a day like he had on Monday where he goes 0 for 4 from 3, the shooting and spacing in this lineup is a little troublesome. So in a matchup where you might need to have a higher scoring kind of day because they just knock down tough shots, and sometimes it's just like they practice too, we got to go score, right? At those kinds of moments and those kinds of games, which like UT Austin might be, you could run into like this lineup can't keep up from a scoring front, right? Crazy length at the rim though with Tugler and Francis at the same time, and you're gonna have Wilson and Shead on the perimeter funneling things in. I mean, you'll see a lot of block shots, a lot of steals from guys trying to make extra one too many passes in this lineup. Really, really fun lineup defensively. And if Sharp and Wilson are hitting, I could see I could offer some points offensively, but that's hoping for a couple different things to be happening. I think Sharp will be on more often than he's not, but more than just that has to happen for that line to have points. I will say if the spacing is working, you also have 2 different roll options or even a Spain pick and roll option coming off of Jamal Shead attacking the rim. A lot of fun there. So the last lineup I saw against Stetson I wanted to point out here was Jamal Shead, LJ Cryer, Emmanuel Sharp, Terrance Arceneaux, and JoJo Tugler. Shead, Cryer, Sharp, Arceneaux, Tugler. Super, super small lineup, right? Arceneaux's at 6'5" and change, long arms, but he's your 4-man. JoJo Tugler, 6'8" and change, crazy long arms. He's your center. You got 2 different 6'2" and under type guys as the point guards. And Emmanuel Sharp is not much taller, playing the technical small forward position. But here's what I love about this lineup. You got so much energy, motor, etc. on the floor at one time with the way that Sharp crashes in for rebounds. You could also, if Ramon Walker is making his threes, put him in that spot to me, but we know Sharp is a great shooter, right? But the way he crashes offensive rebounds, Jamal Shead's intensity in the perimeter, Terrance Arceneaux's great length and defense in the perimeter, JoJo Tugler's all over the floor. All those kinds of things create a high energy motor defensive unit that worked pretty well, frankly, for its stretch against Stetson. It also is probably the best shooting lineup you can roll out there, right? Jamal Shead, we know, is not a legacy shooter, but can shoot with the ball pretty well when you give him space. LJ Cryer and Emmanuel Sharp are legacy shooters. We know that they'll be treated that way, and they walk in the gym. They need to be covered. Terrance Arceneaux looks better shooting this year. We also know he got the mid-range and a great job last year. So that's your 4 spot. You have a lot of shooting. And if you have all that shooting, right, even if Shead is not necessarily having his best day, you suddenly have a lot of spacing for Jamal Shead, JoJo Tugler pick and roll, and that is 2 high motor athletes attacking the rim in a way that you can't help off of the other guys to come help out with it, right? And so defensively, this lineup offered a lot of stuff on the perimeter and a lot of motor behind it at the rim. Offensively, this lineup could be high power the same way. Like think about like a death lineup the Warriors do. And they went super small with Draymond at the 5. Those kinds of things. Now, I'm not saying that JoJo Tugler is Draymond Green, although he is 18 years old, folks. I will say that the way that this would, the plus minus of this could, in the right game, be that kind of a death lineup you feel because of how quickly they could fill up the cup. They hit threes, and give up a 2 every here and there, but threes, right? This could be a rain it down kind of day. I could see Damian Dunn fitting in as well. He's not the same explosive athlete as Terrance Arceneaux, but he's got a little more width and strength to him, so he might fill in with the 4 spot there some too. A fun lineup for sure. And you'll notice in several of those lineups, I mentioned a handful of new Houston Cougars. And if you are running a small business or something like that, and you need somebody new or to find some new people to help add to your team the way that Cryer and Dunn and Tugler and these guys add to the Houston Cougars, you can try out LinkedIn Jobs, because LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right hire for your team faster and for free. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain you have access to the best qualified candidates available, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs to find the right people for your team faster, for free. Again, qualified candidates you want to talk to faster for free. Post your job free at Locked On at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. It's just that fast. I'm just going too fast. LinkedIn.com/lockedoncollege. LinkedIn.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, so obviously the biggest thing in getting healthy and getting through games like that one are that you're getting ready for whatever comes next. And what comes next for the Houston Cougar basketball program is this week they play on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday in what's called the Charleston Classic. It's usually Classic, a handful of, I think this year there are 8 teams there. It's a fun, non-conference, not round robin, but 3-round tournament. You guaranteed 3 games at this place. And we know Houston opens with Towson. Houston ended up actually being one of the headliners in a lot of ways in this event. Houston opens with Towson. Towson, we'll preview again later this week. They play on Thursday, so I guess maybe talk a little bit about them on Wednesday going into Thursday. Towson's 2-1. They played one Power 5 team so far, and they lost to Colorado. Towson's currently 141st in KenPom. I will say, in looking at them, they play longer possessions statistically and analytically based on seconds spent with the ball and how many times they have to reset the shot clock, right? They spend longer possessions than Stetson did, which could lead to, again, a slow start. Again, they're fairly normal size and not the same size advantage as Stetson would have had. I watched some of the Colorado games just over the weekend trying to find something to get ready for the week. And I love watching college basketball because I coach basketball and it's always good to steal stuff. Colorado was able to jump out on them early. That was interesting. Houston's had trouble with that in all 3 of their games so far, but Colorado was able to kind of run them at the gym. Frankly, Colorado has Andy Lampkin. I remember Eddie Lampkin from TCU. He was in the transfer portal. We talked about, does he want to come to Houston? He's from Houston, right? He's at Colorado now. They had no one that could match up with that guy. And so they were able to exploit that and jump out ahead early, and Towson never really recovered. To me, the athlete Houston has for that is Jamal Shead. Jamal Shead has been kind of limiting his minutes thus far. You heard Kelvin Sampson in the postgame on Monday that he wants to kind of limit minutes for all the guys, kind of have an extended March run. He felt like they ran out of gas last year. But Jamal Shead at point guard is a tough cover. I could also see Houston using some of their high motor guys like Tugler or whatever to be kind of that advantage. But whatever the case may be, Houston jumps out early in this one. It should be an easy game. The most common set they ran in Colorado, from what I could tell, was a very simple Spain pick and roll. Spain meaning you screen the screener. So you run a simple high pick and roll from your center and point guard, and then your power forward or small forward comes up and screens the roll man as they're rolling to the basket and creates confusion for the defense on who switches where and who's on first, kind of stuff. It also typically helps if the screener, the second screener, is a shooter, because then they can pop on if the entire thing collapses in the rim. You can kick it out for a jump shot, right? I've always assumed it was called Spain pick and roll because the Gasol brothers ran this so well in the mid-aughts Olympics. But in basketball nerdism digressions, that's the most common set I could see them running. I will say, as far as we talk about different lineups that Houston runs, the easiest thing to do against the Spain pick and rolls is switch a bunch of stuff. And we talked about the switchability in a couple of those lineups that Houston offers. Being an intense defensive team helps on a lot of that, folks. And so I could see Houston coming out and doing that. The guys they put in that screen are a pair of guys named Charles Thompson, who's a more traditional 6'8" big, and Tyler Tejada, who's a 6'7" big who can shoot it a little bit. They're the guys involved in that Spain pick and roll action, with Dillian Williamson being their ball handler, going downhill, attacking off of it. He's a very normal point guard, traditional point guard, not a high-flying scorer point guard, from what I can tell. Again, Tejada, the big, can shoot a little bit popping off the Spain pick and roll. They're both longer. I didn't realize they were listed at 6'8" and 6'7". They looked bigger than that on screen, and so I would imagine that it attributes to length, a little bit of shoulder size, stuff like that. Houston should be able to handle business there, and if they handle business there, they get the winner of Utah and Wake Forest. Utah is ranked higher in most analytical things. Thus far, Utah has played Eastern Washington and UC Riverside. So not a whole lot to take away from that yet. I'm sure we'll dive into that as we figure out when we play them. Whereas Wake Forest played Alonzo, small school in North Carolina, and then played Georgia. They lost a close one to Georgia on the road last Friday night. And that's actually probably one we can dive some more into, get a little bit more takeaways from that. I'll probably have that each of those kind of scouting reports in my back pocket once we find out on Thursday night which one we play. Houston plays really late on Thursday, but they will know who they play, win or lose, because the way the bracket works, if the two winners between the Utah Wake Forest game will play the winner of the Wake Forest Utah game will play the winner of the Towson Houston game. The loser of the Wake Forest Utah game will play the loser of the Towson Houston game, right? So we will know who we play definitively by the end, and we're going to play one of those two teams. I have to say that the kind of fun matchup in this is actually what could theoretically happen in a consolation or in a final game. You can play like an LSU. You could get to see, St. John's and Rick Pitino. There's a bunch of different options on the other side of the bracket that could be really fun to play as well. All in all, it's a ton of great experience going into Big 12 play and conference play later this year. A good early test for the Houston Cougars later this week. And I think that those lineups we saw them roll out against teams like Stetson will be really, really important to success in that tournament. Now, we got a lot of stuff to talk about this week. We got Charleston Classic. We got Dana Holgorsen in the football program take on Oklahoma State in the final home football game of the year. Bowl eligibility is still possible, folks. They got to win both games remaining, but it is still a possibility. Oklahoma State has lost to Southern Alabama and UCF. They've also beaten some really good teams. So who knows who we see on Saturday. The inverse of that is that Houston plays Central Florida the week after, and it's hard to tell what they get Central Florida either, right? So fun football stuff to talk about as well, and as we wrap up that regular season and are hoping for a postseason of some sort. All the things going on there, all the things happening with Cougar football, basketball programs are all happening here at Locked On Coogs, your daily spot for all things Houston Cougars. So make sure you subscribe down below. And for a second listen today, as I'm talking about basketball today, I'm going to recommend we have a podcast, Locked On College Basketball, all things college basketball. Andy Knights do a great job with that one. It's relatively new. I think it's just over a year old. So make sure you go check that out for your second listen if you're a basketball person. You made it this far, you got to be a basketball person, right? Got to be. Thank you all again so much. Locked On Coogs, the primary Locked On podcast. That means your team, our Coogs, every day. Go Coogs.